In the world of credit card points, transferring out to transfer partners is how you get the most value. This is how I and many other people you've seen online have been able to fly in business and in first class and also stay at some of the nicest hotels in the world for a fraction of the listed price. If it wasn't for credit card points, many of us would only just be flying in economy because the actual listed cost when it comes to international business and first class flights is just astronomical. So I'm thankful that I know how to redeem my credit card points for good value. Now, the most valuable credit card points are going to be the ones that are transferable currencies. These are going to be things like Chase Ultimate Reward points, American Express membership reward points, Citi Thank You points, and Capital One Venture Mile. All of these bank points have the ability to be converted into either airline miles or hotel points, depending on which programs these banks are partnered with. And when you do this for certain awards, it gives you significantly more value than what cashing out your points would give you. Now, there are a lot of transfer partners out there. Some are good, some are terrible. And the ones that even are terrible aren't necessarily terrible programs, they just may end up being a terrible transfer partner because of the value of the points isn't very high. Take for example IHG. IHG is not a bad hotel program, and honestly, I wish I actually had more IHG points in my account. But when it comes to grabbing onto my Chase Ultimate Reward points, which is a partner with IHG, it wouldn't make much sense to transfer over my Ultimate Reward points to my IHG account because IHG points are only worth about a half of a cent per point, whereas with Chase Ultimate Reward points, even if I decided to just cash out those points, I get myself a penny for each point. So transferring over my Chase Ultimate Reward points to my IHG account would be like grabbing onto $100 and asking for 100 Mexican pesos. There's nothing wrong with Mexican pesos, but you'd prefer to have US dollars if it happens to be the exact same number, unless of course you were in Mexico and you saw a taco stand that you desperately wanted to eat at. In this video, I'm going to recommend 3 transfer partners that I think people should take advantage of, but I'm also going to have 3 transfer partners that, while they may end up being popular ones that you hear about, are going to be ones that I'm going to tell people to hold off with. And these programs I'm telling people to hold off with are not necessarily bad programs. In fact, these are actually ones that I've transferred over to myself, but I'm starting to see these programs as being less competitive when it comes to being a transfer partner, and I think there ends up being better alternatives out there. Now, transferring out to transfer partners is a more advanced part of the credit card world, but I'm going to do my best in this video to make sure that it's really digestible for newer people in the game. So first, I want to recommend a program that I find to be one of the best in the game. Whether you are a beginner or you're more advanced, this is definitely a program that you're going to want to take advantage of if you happen to have Chase Ultimate Rewards points. And this is going to be the World of Hyatt program. Hyatt is a program that I found to be incredibly easy to get good value from. You can be a beginner and redeem your World of Hyatt points and easily get 2 cents per point for one of your Hyatt stays. When redeeming airline miles, a lot of people find it hard to even get above 2 cents per point. But with Hyatt, because of the fact that they go off of an award chart, there is a fixed rate when it comes to the cost of how many points are going to be required to stay at that property, so this can make it really easy to get yourself good value for your redemption. Now, in the last year, Hyatt did add Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties, which doesn't go off of their award chart and goes off of dynamic pricing, so be on the lookout for them because if you do end up redeeming your World of Hyatt points at these properties, you're probably going to end up getting yourself terrible value for your points. But if you avoid the Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties, regardless if you're staying at a luxury park Hyatt or a simple Hyatt place, Hyatt has you covered to get good value with their redemptions. The key thing to note with Hyatt is that they only have a limited amount of space when it comes to booking these awesome award deals. So you have to make sure that you do book them before they're gone because as soon as they're gone, you may not be able to redeem your points at that property. Next, let's look at a program that I'm going to tell people to hold off from transferring to. Now, this is one that's probably going to be a little controversial, and this is one that I transferred over to multiple times myself, but this is going to end up being the Flying Blue program. Now, I know there's probably a lot of people who think that this is one of the best transfer partners out there, and I would agree that there are many positive things about Flying Blue. When it comes to transferring your points over to the Flying Blue program, unlike with Hyatt where you only have either Chase Ultimate Rewards points or Bilt Rewards points to be able to transfer over to that program, with Flying Blue, they are transfer partners to all of the major banks. This is great because it makes it so that the points are not very difficult to come by. Because say you happen to see a business class flight available for 60,000 Flying Blue points, but you only have 20,000 Chase Ultimate Reward points and 40,000 American Express membership reward points. Well, the great thing is that since they are both partnered with Flying Blue, you could transfer those 60,000 points to your Flying Blue account and be able to book this business class flight. Another great thing about Flying Blue is that when they do end up releasing award availability at their saver price, they tend to have many seats available. With a lot of the programs out there, when they do end up releasing saver award availability, they may only end up having like 1 or 2 seats available. But with Flying Blue, I've seen 9 seats available before. So if you happen to be someone who is traveling as a family, Flying Blue can definitely end up being a program that you want to look at because you can end up finding award space for a large group. And I think that most people can also agree that when it comes to the airlines that are partnered with Flying Blue, being Air France and KLM, these are going to end up being better airlines to fly over to Europe with as compared to our domestic airlines like United or American Airlines. I've flown in economy and business class on all four of these products before, and I would say that Air France is number one, KLM is number two, United is number three, and then American Airlines would end up being in last. Now, while I have just been saying positive things about Flying Blue, I'm gonna go over my issues when it comes to their program. The first thing is gonna end up being the high taxes and fees. Now, in economy, it isn't that bad. But when you start looking at business class flights, which is what a lot of people want to do when they are taking advantage of these transfer partners, you're going to be looking at close to $300 flying into Europe and then close to $400 flying out of Europe. Now, these aren't the worst tax and fees flying out of Europe. That would go with flying with one of the English airlines out of London. But these taxes and fees are really high. Say you happen to be someone who has a family of 5 and you're excited to see that there's 5 business class flights available with Air France to fly out of Paris back over to the States. Well, the tax and fees for those 5 business class flights is going to end up being close to $2,000 on top of all the miles also required. And that's just one way. We end up seeing how much it is in taxes and fees required for these business class flights. While you may end up being excited to find this award availability, the excitement quickly disappears when you end up seeing how much additional money you have to pay on top of the miles. Now, if you're someone who wants to go visit Paris or Amsterdam, then sure, it will make a lot of sense to go with the Flying Blue program. But if you're just looking for a cheap business class flight over to Europe, there are better options out there. I mean, people complain a lot about United that charges 80,000 points when you find their Saver Award availability to get over to Europe, but they only charge $5.60 in taxes and fees. So yes, it is more miles, but you end up having significantly cheaper in taxes and fees, plus you also get yourself free cancellations, whereas with Flying Blue, they charge $75 for a cancellation fee. Now, I'm not saying that United has a better deal because they do charge 20,000 additional points for their business class flights. But when I look at the cheap cancellations and also the low taxes and fees, I would say that these two award deals are on par with one another. That may be controversial to say, that's just my opinion. In the last couple of years, Flying Blue has been playing around with its Saver Award prices. A couple of years ago, they had different prices for their business class flights with Air France and also KLM, but it averaged right around about 70,000 points. Then last year, they dropped the award prices to only being 50,000 points. However, this year, they did a devaluation to where now it is 60,000 points for their Saver business class flights. When it was at an average of 70,000 points, there was a lot of availability. Now, you could say that it wasn't the greatest deal because the taxes and fees on top of it, but it was kind of like you were paying a premium to have all this additional availability. And when it dropped down to only being 50,000 points, all the availability just dried right up. Now, this may be because the deal got so much better, so everyone just started booking all of these different award seats. But now at 60,000 points, the prices went up, yet it doesn't seem that the availability has gotten any better. Again, this isn't me telling you to completely avoid the Flying Blue program, because sometimes there are convenient routes out there. While they may not end up being the best deals, you still can end up getting a reasonable deal for flying specifically to and from either Paris or Amsterdam. But don't just jump on transferring your points over to the Flying Blue program, even if you happen to see a transfer bonus. Because what I think will happen to a lot of people is that you're going to transfer your points over to the program and you're going to realize that the taxes and fees are just so much higher than you anticipated, or you're going to end up transferring your points over to that program to take advantage of one of the transfer bonuses. However, you're going to start seeing that the availability when it comes to their Saver prices is incredibly scarce. Now, a program I'd recommend to transfer to over Flying Blue would end up being Virgin Atlantic. That's going to be the second program that I recommend to transfer over your transferable currencies to. Just like Flying Blue, Virgin Atlantic miles are super easy to come by as they are a transfer partner to all the big major banks. Now, I know immediately after I said Virgin Atlantic over Flying Blue, there are people who are more advanced who have booked with Virgin Atlantic and are thinking their taxes and fees are just as high, if not higher, than what Flying Blue is charging. And this is true that Virgin Atlantic does have decently high taxes and fees, especially if you are going to be flying out of England. However, what I would say to that is, when it comes to the Saver Award prices, Virgin Atlantic charges significantly less miles for their flights as compared to Flying Blue. If you look at business class flights, the cheapest with Virgin Atlantic, I've seen it going for 29,000 Virgin Atlantic miles. So yes, the $250 in taxes and fees is on par when it comes to what Flying Blue is charging, but Flying Blue is also charging 60,000 points. So you're going to be paying less than half the amount of miles required, even though the taxes and fees are the same. So sure, it is annoying to see $250 in taxes and fees, but when you combine that with only 29,000 Virgin Atlantic miles to book this business class flight, it really doesn't feel that bad. And also at Virgin Atlantic, they have good deals when it comes to their partner bookings. So if you are someone who is more advanced or you're starting to learn more of the game of booking with partner programs, then you could be able to book with ANA, Hawaiian Airlines, LATAM, and so on. And the prices to book partner award flights with Virgin Atlantic are either the cheapest prices or they're very competitive, especially when you add in the consistent transfer bonuses that all the banks typically end up having with Virgin Atlantic throughout the year. Transfer bonuses are huge, and I always try to take advantage of them so I can pay even less for my already cheap flights. I have speculatively transferred to both Flying Blue and Virgin Atlantic. I don't see myself speculatively transferring to Flying Blue anytime in the near future, but I definitely could see myself doing it with Virgin Atlantic just because of how many awesome deals they have out there. Now let's look at the second program that I don't recommend that you transfer to, and that's going to be Turkish Airlines. For the longest time, I wanted to get Turkish miles because I saw that the program had some really awesome sweet spots. I flew with Turkish Airlines in business class as a partner award booking before, and I had a wonderful experience. I was hoping to fly again with them, redeeming Turkish miles. The challenging part was that getting Turkish miles wasn't easy because when it comes to the big major banks, the two biggest ones are going to be Chase and American Express. And that's where I have most of my points. However, Turkish Airlines is not a transfer partner to either one of these programs. So because of this, that deal that Turkish Airlines used to have in the past of only being 45,000 Turkish Airlines miles to book a business class flight over to Europe was something that I wasn't able to take advantage of. However, when I got approved for the Capital One Venture X card, I was super happy because Capital One is a transfer partner with Turkish Airlines, and I told myself that all of my Capital One Venture miles were going to be used to take advantage of Turkish Airlines sweet spots. Now, before I even got approved for the Capital One Venture X card, I played around with Turkish Airlines website to be able to figure out how to find the different deals with their program. And I must say that Turkish Airlines, when it comes to their website, has got to be the most frustrating website out of any airline website by a long shot. The amount of times that I got locked out of my account because of some password issue or there were some errors that kept on popping up on the website was just insane. But then, after going through all that headache with Turkish's website and finally figuring out how to find the different sweet spots and deals, Turkish Airlines did a devaluation to their program. So that sweet spot that was 45,000 points to get a business class flight over to Europe, it's now 65,000 points, specifically if you want to go over to Istanbul, but if you want to connect over to somewhere else in Europe, the price ends up jumping astronomically. The flight direct to Istanbul isn't really a bad deal, but it's definitely not the best deal out there. However, when it comes to flights connecting outside of Istanbul redeeming Turkish miles, it's not even worth it. So unless I decide to return to Istanbul, I don't see myself using Turkish miles, which is why I wouldn't recommend anyone to transfer over their transferable currencies over to Turkish Miles and Smiles account. Now I know that there's some more advanced people who are thinking, but you can redeem Turkish miles to get yourself cheap domestic economy flights with United. And I gotta say that I never even saw that as being such an amazing deal. I would hear people talk about it and say how awesome it is, but we're talking about 10,000 miles to get yourself a domestic economy flight with United. I can do that for even cheaper miles with Virgin Atlantic to get over to England in economy, and I don't hear anyone raving about how amazing that deal is. And I know that you can also redeem Turkish miles for domestic business class flights with United for pretty darn cheap. But I have to say that I am someone who is very good when it comes to finding award availability, and I have found this very few times. In fact, it has been so few of times that's not even worth looking for. Listen, I love the country Turkey, and I really enjoyed flying on their aircraft. But when it comes to their program, it is not one that you should be transferring over your transferable currencies to unless you find a very specific award deal. The program that I'd recommend to transfer to over Turkish Airlines would end up being Aeroplan. And that's going to be the third program that I recommend that you transfer over your transferable currencies to. Aeroplan may have the strongest miles in the game. I think the only reason why I and others may put American Airlines as being better is because American Airlines doesn't have any cancellation fees, whereas Aeroplan does. But when it comes to looking at the cheapest award deals, when you're booking partner airlines with your Aeroplan miles, they either are going to end up having the cheapest prices when it comes to points or taxes, or they are very close and very competitive. Now, Aeroplan goes off of dynamic pricing with their own flights. So if you happen to be redeeming your Aeroplan miles to fly with Air Canada, then it's probably going to end up being pretty expensive. But if you happen to be redeeming your Aeroplan miles to fly with one of their partners, whether you were flying either over to Europe or over to Africa or over to Australia, you end up seeing that the prices are really, really good. You could book business class flights to all these different places for between 60,000 and 75,000 Aeroplan miles. So that right there, with the low taxes and fees, is already a solid deal. But if you happen to have the Aeroplan card with Chase, you can get a 10% transfer bonus when you grab onto your Chase Ultimate Reward points and transfer it over to your Aeroplan account. If you time it out with also getting a 20% transfer bonus that Chase seems to have every single year over to Aeroplan, you can get a 30% transfer bonus for one of the programs that's already the most powerful in the game. And what's even greater about the Aeroplan card is they have a pay yourself back feature for travel purchases, giving you a value of 1.25 cents per point for your travel redemptions. And if you happen to combine this with the 30% transfer bonus, that gives you a pay yourself back for travel purchases as being at 1.625 cents per point, which beats out the Chase Sapphire Reserve. Now you can get way more value redeeming your Aeroplan miles with partner award bookings, but just knowing that you get a base level of redemption of being 1.625 is pretty darn awesome. Aeroplan is a program that I have done speculative transfers to during the times that they've had a transfer bonus. And if you're someone who also happens to have the Aeroplan card, then I don't think that doing speculative transfers to Aeroplan is a bad thing at all. Because even if you were absolutely terrible at making award bookings because you didn't go to Points Travel 101 and get my course and figure out how to become an expert at it, well, at least now you still can end up getting yourself a higher redemption rate than the vast majority of people out there are. And the third program that I don't recommend that you transfer over your transferable currencies to is going to be Hilton. Now, Hilton in the last year has done some really good things to their program. They revamped their cards, which in my opinion became better if you happen to be a Hilton loyalist. They also added in small luxury hotels of the world, which have some really nice properties, and if you can find standard award availability, typically you end up getting a pretty good deal redeeming your Hilton Honors points at small luxury hotels of the world. The problem with Hilton is going to be the transfer ratio that they have with American Express. So for those of you who don't know, Hilton has a transfer ratio to where for every one American Express membership reward point that you have, you can transfer over to Hilton for 2 Hilton Honors points. Now, there are a lot of people who are even deeper in the points and miles game who have done this transfer ratio just because they want to take advantage of some type of award booking with Hilton. I've seen people online talk about transferring the points over to Hilton all the time because Hilton is a solid program. They're just not a solid transfer partner at that ratio. It'd be wiser to get yourself the Charles Schwab card, grab onto your membership reward points, and then cash out those points. Use that cash to book the Hilton property that you wish to stay at. If Hilton and American Express had the transfer ratio as being 1 American Express point for 3 Hilton points as compared to 1 American Express point for 2 Hilton points, then it would make a lot more sense to transfer over your transferable currency to your Hilton Honors account. And they've done a 1 to 3 transfer bonus in the past. Heck, even a 1 to 2.9 could end up making a lot of sense, but when they only end up doing it as either a 1 to 2 or even a 1 to 2.6, it still just isn't the best deal. Now, I know that there's people out there who will say, well, I transferred over 75,000 of my membership reward points to my Hilton Honors account to get 150,000 Hilton Honors points to be able to book a stay at the Waldorf Astoria in the Maldives that typically ends up costing over $2,000 a night. Sure, you did end up getting a big discount when it comes to the cost for that stay at the Waldorf Astoria in the Maldives, but you still end up paying, as compared to what it would have been for the cash out rate for those points, close to $800 a night to stay at a hotel. For myself, I don't wish to pay $800 a night at a hotel. That is the reason why I got into the points and miles world. Is $800 a night significantly cheaper than $2,000 a night? Yes, but I still do not want to be paying $800 a night to stay at any property. This is the reason why I love Hyatt, and I would recommend Hyatt over Hilton, because when it comes to the transferring of your transferable currencies, you can get better value for your points. Because if you look at the top costs when it comes to Hyatt properties, being a Category 8 costing you 40,000 points per night, well, if you were to cash out those 40,000 Chase Ultimate Reward points, that ended up giving you $400. And while $400 is an expensive night to stay at a hotel property, I have paid that before when I've went to weddings and had to stay at that property. But if someone invited me to a wedding and the property ended up being $800 a night, there's no way I'd be staying at that property. This is why I put Hyatt over Hilton, because you have to remember that there is a cash out rate for your points. And if the cash out rate is really high, even though you are getting a good deal, you still have to remember what the cash out rate would have been. If American Express ever increases the transfer ratio with Hilton, then I would tell everyone to transfer over their membership reward points to their Hilton Honors account. But for where it is now, it's not one that I'm going to recommend you do. Now, just because I'm saying to hold off from these programs doesn't mean that these are bad programs and that you can't take advantage of them. I have a wedding that I'm going to be going to in a few months where I'm going to be flying with Air France, and I transferred over my membership reward points to my Flying Blue account. So I'm not against these airline or hotel programs, but I just see better alternatives out there, and I want for you all to get the best deals. This is the reason why I'm saying to go with Virgin over Flying Blue, Aeroplan over Turkish Airlines, and then Hyatt over Hilton. but you always have to take in consideration the convenient factor. And this is the reason why I am flying with Air France to get home from that wedding, because while I am paying a premium, I am willing to pay that premium for the additional convenience. But things change all the time in the world of points and miles. So what I do say is the best option now may not end up being the best option next month. But hopefully you enjoy this video. Let me know in the comment section down below, which programs do you recommend to transferring your transferable currencies to, and which ones do you tell people to avoid from doing it with? Now, if you happen to have any questions, you could drop it down in the comment section down below. I'll do the best I can to answer it. If you happen to be interested in any cards, go to my description box to learn more. If you do decide to use any of my links, it does really help out the channel, and I'll be incredibly thankful for your support. If you want to become a points and miles booking expert, go to Points Travel 101 to learn more. After going through my course, you will feel confident when it comes to booking business and first class flights around the world. And if you really like this video, do me a favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and have a beautiful rest of your day.